Cuba's President Raul Castro has arrived for his first state visit to Mexico. He and Mexico's President Enrique Pena Nieto declared a new era in bilateral relations between the two Latin American nations. They then signed extensive agreements on trade and immigration. CCTV's Franc Contreras has more.
Cuban President Raul Castro received a warm welcome from Mexico's President Enrique Pena Nieto and several Mexican cabinet officials. It's Raul Castro's first state visit to Mexico since he became the president of Cuba in 2006. The leaders of both nations signed an historic agreement on migration from Cuba to Mexico.
The modernization and amplification of bilateral accords have been signed to guarantee a safer and more orderly migration flow between our two countries. In doing so, we will combat human trafficking and other crimes associated with migration.
The announcement comes as a growing number of Cuban nationals pass through Mexico on their way to the United States. They're hoping to receive automatic refugee status, which the U.S. still offers Cubans upon reaching U.S. soil. Another dominant theme during this brief high-level meeting, how to increase trade and investment between Cuba and Mexico.
We are cooperating not just for the benefit of our respective populations, but also in favor of inter-American and Caribbean integration.
In 2014, trade between Mexico and Cuba reached $374 million, a small fraction of the $500 billion worth of trade in 2014 between Mexico and the United States. An expert on Latin American diplomacy says Cuba comes to Mexico seeking to diversify its list of investors.
I think the Cuban government strategy says we will diversify our commercial relations when it comes to investment and do it before the U.S. embargo is lifted.
The Cuban government knows that reestablishing diplomatic relations with the United States also means that U.S. investors will return to Cuba. That appears to be inevitable, and when it does happen, the Cuban government wants to make certain those U.S. investors are not the only players in their nation's economy. Franc Contreras, CCTV, Mexico City.